creating a unified message. The first thing that I want you to focus on is developing a core set of graphics. And this is a core set of graphics that's going to go across all of your spaces. You know how we used to, we would do like branding packages or something like that. You would go and, you would get a branding package from your creative agency, or you would get a publicity packet or something like that. And in that would be your logo, your letterhead, your business cards, some pins with your name on them and stuff like that, right? So in this case, it's the same thing, only your business cards and your letterhead are now pieces of digital artwork. And so when you develop this core set of graphics, I want you to think in terms of what type of graphics you're going to need. Because it's not just going to be a business card size or a letterhead size. It's going to be different everywhere you go. Okay? The first thing you're going to need is an avatar. And an avatar is a defining image that goes in the profile picture section of all of the networks that you're on. And that network, or that avatar, is going to be a square image in most cases. On Facebook, they do allow for oblong avatars, but I would prefer you to keep it square. I think that creates a more consistent look, because most places offer squares, and that's it. So in general, what I would like for you to think about in there is developing, no matter if your logo is square or not, finding a way to represent yourself inside of a square. I usually start out with a 600 by 600 pixel square, because generally there's nothing bigger than a 600 by 600 pixel square in a social network profile. And so that'll scale down well. It'll also scale up well if it needs to be blown up or something like that, right? Okay. We also need to think about the different, like if you're showcasing portfolio, or you're showcasing your work or photography or whatever it is, I want you to think about developing a core set of pieces that are going to go across all spaces. Of course, if you have products that you sell, find your flagship products and make those into some decent photographs. Don't ever put junk up there. Okay? Don't do pixelated images. Don't do images that have been scaled infinitely to the point where they're unrecognizable. Don't do blurry photos. Take the time to make sure this stuff looks good. Also, develop in your core set of graphics references to your tagline and bio, and I'm going to discuss those in just a minute. If you look on my Twitter page, for instance, it's cut off because of the screen size issue, and I'm going to talk about that later. But I have branded myself. You'll see it right here. Look at this, right there. I've branded myself the Designer Trainer Geek. All right, that's my brand. That's who I am. And right here on the left-hand side, it says Designer Trainer Geek. It's cut off, of course, but at least it's there. And people can see that, and they kind of make the translation. All right, when you look on my website, I always talk about, welcome to my official home, Designer, Trainer, and Geek. Okay, when you go to Google+, Designer, Trainer, and Geek. So, find ways to incorporate that into your core set of graphics. Find ways to creatively display whatever your message happens to be. If you fix toilets, say best toilet fixer on earth, or whatever it is. Just find a way to do that. I want you to also work on a series of taglines, biographies, and catchphrases. If you do not have a canned tagline, bio, or catchphrase, you are doing yourself a disservice. Every time I go and teach a workshop or record a DVD or teach at a seminar or teach at a conference or whatever, inevitably the first thing they ask me for is a headshot and a bio. And if I don't have something that is consistent, I could get into a real mess. Because I want to be, everywhere I am on the internet, I want people to know it's me. And so what I've done, I've gone through and I actually worked with some PR people on mine. Okay? And so I handcrafted this little bio, and it's the same one that I use everywhere I go. Now, in some cases, I allow people to take poetic license with it a little bit and alter it up to change it for whatever it is I'm doing that particular day. But at the core, it still has the same information in it. Justin Celia is a renowned software trainer with almost 10 years experience in the creative media industry. I can almost recite it right here to you. right? His podcasts have been featured on numerous blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? So in that way, when people see that and then they read the description in iTunes and they're like, oh, it's that dude. Or they see a DVD or a YouTube video, they're like, oh, yeah, it's that guy. It's creating an awareness. Okay? Your bio, that's the big one. Your tagline, or, a lot of people, slogan, a lot of people call it slogan, I call it tagline. My tagline is designer, trainer, and geek, right? And so my bio is the same, my tagline is the same. I have a ton of catchphrases. If you've been paying attention over the last 3 or 4 days, I have a ton of, weird things that I say. And, I use those on the internet all the time. I use them in status updates. I use them in writing blog posts and all that kind of stuff. And I make sure that I'm very conscious of what I say. I'm not just up here babbling. I'm doing this on purpose. I say things go the way of the dodo on purpose because it's something that I say. All right? I use that because people hear that and then they also hear that I'm from Kentucky and they're like, oh, isn't that cute? That little simpleton is coming up with another quip. And so that's, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And so I've created this system to do that. Okay? Now I'm going to walk you through exactly my process for doing these in just a second, but I want to go through this too. I want you to also work on using a single point of contact. Because if you're not driving people somewhere, they're going to be all over the place. Okay? It's a whole lot easier to put everybody in one big basket and carry that basket than it is to carry a bunch of little baskets. Okay? So, my single point of contact is my website. If you want to absolutely make sure you get a hold of me, you fill out that contact form on that website. Because it's tied into an email address, which I have on my iPhone, my iPad, my MacBook. Everywhere I go, that email address is there. And somehow, some way, it's going to pop up and say, got a new email, Justin. And you can ask anybody on earth. I do not ignore when my phone dings or my iPad buzzes. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. All right? I was checking Twitter right before I got married. I'm not joking. I had my phone in my pocket. Seriously. So, if my wife's watching, that's not true, honey. I was just kidding. But, and a lot of people are going to disagree with that, okay? Because a lot of people believe in the theory of unplugging. And I'll talk about that later too. But I want you to make sure you're driving people to a single point of contact. And if you don't drive them there, like I said, you're going to be getting messages on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, everywhere else. Generally what I will do, if somebody sends me a message where I know I can't respond very quickly on that given network, I will say, please go to my website, fill out my contact form. Or I'll just give them my email address. It's the same email address, right? You have to be careful with how you do that, though, because if you post that in a public way, number one, people will, use that badly. And number two, it can be crawled, so you can start getting some spam. So basically, let me show you how I display my email address online. Okay? When I go into anywhere, and this is going to be really huge. Okay? So I'll do this. Okay? That's how I write it out. Nobody can crawl that. But if someone is tech savvy enough, they know what that means. Right? Because they can read it out literally to themselves and then they get it. Justin@Sealy.tv. Oh, I get it. It's an email address. Right? Now, if you show this to somebody who's not tech savvy, they're going to look at it and be like, well, how do I send an email to that? You may not want to talk to that person anyway. Okay? Just kidding. You want to talk to everybody, but that's how I do it. Okay? And like I said, that's not for everybody, but that's, and I just publicly told, however many people are watching, I just publicly told them my email address. And I'm okay with that. When we go to break here in a few minutes, I'll have 20, 30 emails that I have to get to tonight. But that's cool because I'll have something to do on the plane. So, all right. Okay. So that pretty much does it for the slides at the moment. Let's get in here and start talking about actually how to do it. All right. So let's pretend, theoretically, that we are going and we're going to put me online today. We're going to brand me as something different. Okay, so let's say that I'm going to be, what am I going to do? I'm going to be a zookeeper today. Okay, I'm going to be Justin the zookeeper. And so I need to first come up with a core set of graphics to be the best branded zookeeper on the earth. Right? I just watched Zookeeper the other day. That's why I came up with it. Very good film, by the way, if you've never seen it. So the first thing I need to do inside of Photoshop, remember, is I need to create some sort of avatar. And I'll, yeah, I get it. Don't bark at me. Okay, 600 by 600, my general method, the general method to my madness when it comes to this, all right? And so when I'm doing this, chances are I'm going to use my picture. But you don't necessarily have to use your picture, okay? So let's create something. I'm just going to make this up on the fly, so you guys are going to get to kind of see me be a little creative here. So let's say that my logo looks like this, okay? Let's say my logo looks like this. All right, so there's my logo. Now, if my logo looks like this, and I just put it inside of this square, is that going to look good at 100 pixels by 100 pixels? No, it's not. People are not going to be able to see that, right? So here's what you're going to have to do. You may have to break a little bit from the norm here. But you could take this, and you could kind of blow it up a little bit, and then maybe move it down, and then put something here. Maybe like a ghosted picture of my face, or maybe like a ghosted picture of an elephant or something like that to let people know that I'm, or you could just simply draw something, generic or whatever you wanted to do. You could also, and this is only if this can be done with your branding, okay? You could also take this, and so I could just kind of, blow this up. And I know this is, breaking style guides and everything else, so don't yell at me, internet. But, I can kind of manipulate it so it looks like this. And now, I do this, and watch this. Then I'll just kind of stick it down here. So it's kind of trendy looking, right? Kind of trendy looking. And then I could put something, ghosted in the background to kind of throw it off. I don't know, okay. Why not? I like slugs. Right? This is a horrendous logo. Please don't judge me on this. But put this back there, maybe at about 10%. Okay, so maybe it's something like that. It just depends. Okay, but I find ways to be creative with the stuff that I've already got. Then I would go in and I would start mapping out other things. So I would go out and map a Twitter background that matches that. Or I would go out and map a Facebook profile picture or something that matches this. Or I would go in and I would, find a way to make that look good horizontally so that if I never needed a banner of it, I could use it as a banner. Then let's say, for instance, that, I needed to incorporate my tagline, which I might. Okay? And I could just say, feeding the beasts. Right? So there's my little tagline. And so that might go here. Or maybe you don't even have your logo element here. Maybe you just have this displayed in a creative way. Like, tiled one after the other, feeding the beast or something like that. Just find different ways. Use your taglines, use your bios, use your catchphrases. Use those in different ways to display uniquely and represent you. The key here is to represent you. All right? You don't want, like if I'm a zookeeper, I don't want to put a picture of a car in here, okay? It goes back to my quote that I had the other day. If you're a dog, don't try to be a kangaroo. All right? If you're a dog, don't try to be a kangaroo. It's the same way with don't find a different... If you're a photographer, don't go onto a social network for sports, sports people. If you're, unless you're a sports photographer. But, if you shoot weddings, don't go onto a thing for monster truck rallies. Right? I mean, seriously, if you're a dog, don't try to be a kangaroo. All right? So, once you've developed that core set of graphics, then you're going to save all of those out. Put them in a folder somewhere. Make sure they're accessible. All right? And so when these are accessible, that makes it so much easier to find. All right, I'm horrible about making my files accessible. All right, I have stuff in folders all over my hard drive. Every now and then I'll go back in and I'll make this wonderfully beautiful structure of folders. I have one now that's like, personal brand, and I've got logos, I've got bios, I've got taglines, I've got headshots, all that stuff in this folder. I did that probably 3 weeks ago. Since I've started doing more workshops and stuff, that folder is disgusting. Because I'm constantly changing. I'm losing weight still and all that kind of stuff. So I've had to update my profile picture several times over the last few months, and it's bad. The folder is bad. So name your files meaningful things too. If I could give you one other piece of advice here, name your files meaningful things. Don't name them like logo 1 or something like that. Like in this case, I would call this like Zookeeper logo square, Zookeeper logo long, Zookeeper logo tall. And that way I can always see, okay, there's tall, there's square, there's, whatever. And I can instantly upload those to the correct places. All right? But it does come down to also studying the given place where you're uploading stuff to. Because if you don't know the dimensions or the aspect ratio of where you're putting stuff, your things are going to be squished or stretched and it's not going to look good. Or it might even get cropped. And if it gets cropped, that's even worse, because then people can't read what you do at all, or can't read what you have at all. Okay? You also have to use the space that you're given effectively. And we've kind of covered this a little bit already, but using the space effectively is a big deal. And so when we talk about using space effectively, what I'm talking about is inside that square. Remember when I first started out with that square? When I first started out with the square here, I had that little bit of text in the middle. Okay. Had little text in the middle. Get all that blank space. Now, in some cases, white space is good. Okay, so designers, I'm not knocking white space. But in this case, I'm not making, this is already going to be small. It's going to be like 150 pixels or 200 pixels by 200 pixels. It's going to be very small. I'm already limited in what I'm allowed to showcase here. If I don't use that space effectively, I'm not able to truly convey the message I want to get across. When you're looking at a Facebook page, okay, let's ignore the fact that I have this custom tab right here. Okay, so ignore that and look over here. Okay, I should probably have a modified version of this right there, if I really think about it, because what if this tab doesn't work? What if something doesn't load? How are people going to know they found the right Justin? They might recognize my picture, but they might not. They'll probably recognize this because I brand that everywhere on the internet. So use that space effectively. Maybe I could, layer this at the bottom like in a lower third across here. Maybe I could crop the photo a little different so that it's, cropped up here and more of my neck shows so that I have room to put something down there. You have to get creative in what you're using here because they don't give you a whole lot of space. They give you a little square. That's it. And in that little square, you have to make magic happen.